Back in March, I did a short classics recommendations video for classics under 200 pages. And like no sooner had I finished filming that than I instantly thought of a whole bunch more. Because I was just like kind of picking things off the shelf that were like to hand, you know, and then a lot of my favorite short classics actually are things I don't own. And so, yeah, as soon as I'd finished filming that video, I thought, what about this one? And what about that one? And I really wanted to just make another video. And so here we are, beginning with The Summer Book by Tove Jansson. There's this like modern trend for seasonal reading. So if you're the kind of person who likes to match your book to the season, then this is the perfect book to read in summer. It feels like it's the perfect book to read now in the UK. It's really, really summery weather. Despite the fact that it's spring. But anyway, it's about this family that goes to an island in the summers. Every chapter is like a little event or a moment set on that island. So sometimes you're not sure if it's the same summer or if it's the summer over, you know, like a different year. But the focus is always on the relationship between an old woman and her granddaughter. So these conversations between like a child and an older person are quite like touching, often like philosophically inflected. And it's just chill. It is the chillest book on this list. It's one of the chillest books I've ever read. It's really like got a lazy feel to it in a way because each chapter is a bit like a short story in and of itself. So you can kind of pick it up and put it down. And also, like I said, there's not this clear sense of time progressing because it's always summer when you pick up a new chapter. You don't know if it's this summer, if it's the next one. When I pick these books, I'm also half thinking about somebody who doesn't have enough time, or maybe who's just getting into the classics or feels a bit intimidated or whatever. So something like this I think fits the bill really well. It's easy to pick up, it's easy to put down. If it's not for you, then you know you've at least gotten like a few little stories out of it. It doesn't feel like you've wasted your time being there on that summer island, but honestly I think it will be for you. I think it's for anybody. Next up, Passing by Nella Larsen, a book which feels so contemporary in its exploration of like intersecting identities. It's about these two women who meet after a long time, and one of them, they're both black women, but one of them passes as white and has lived her life as a white woman. And this is in America, I think in 1920s or 30s. And yeah, the way that identity and how you identify and present yourself and how society looks at you or accepts you or doesn't accept you, how all of that is tied to just basic survival is such an important part of the book. But at the same time, it's got a nice kind of drama. The characters are drawn out really well. They feel real. You know, it's not a treatise, it's a story, but it's just got a lot of good ideas in it, which feels so relevant today. It feels like it could have been written yesterday, you know what I mean? Next is the Kreutzer Sonata by Leo Tolstoy. These aren't in any order, by the way. They're just like in the order that they came to mind for me. Now, this one I would say is definitely not for everybody. It begins with a group of people on a train, like discussing gender and gender kind of imbalances, the battle of the sexes, marriage, the role of women, the rights of women, all this stuff, right? And it transpires in the conversation that one of the people there in the carriage has murdered his wife out of jealousy. And, you know, like this was a known thing, right? It's not like a secret. It's like it was in the newspapers or whatever. And then that kind of ends the conversation on an awkward note. The sort of the narrator, I think is a lawyer, but like there's a first person narrator who is interested in the wife killer, and they keep talking on the train, and then he says, okay, I'll tell you my life story, I'll tell you everything, and then the kind of the proper novel begins. Back when I read this book hit the spot for me because it did three things that I like. It's the title of a piece of music, and I really like when a work of art is titled after a piece of music, like a piece of classical music, you know, which doesn't have lyrics. And then like you kind of like listen to the music and you read the thing, or you look at the painting or whatever, and they all kind of like merge in your mind, the story and the music. And I don't know, I really like that for some reason. So this does that really easily. It's the Kreutzer Sonata, right? And the music does play an important role in the story later on. The second thing this does, which I like, is having characters who think about gender in a critical way but don't get it right. Do you know what I mean? Like they're kind of pushing against the constraints of their society, and working on a sense of instinct, like that can't be right, that's just socially constructed, right? But they don't necessarily become like a feminist ally or anything. Like in this case, definitely not. Like it ends in wife murder, right? But yeah, reading about like how people rationalize their instincts and their sense that like society has just got it wrong about something like gender, I don't know, I really enjoy reading that. And the third thing I quite like reading about usually is men who are pathetic losers. So this definitely ticks all those boxes for me. And I know that a lot of people wouldn't like this because, the main guy is quite misogynistic. So yeah, if that sounds like a fun time to you, you might like this book. If not, then, and if like you want to just chill and you don't want to read like inside of a horrible misogynistic person's mind, then maybe not. Side note, Penguin actually publishes this in a little series of short classics called Great Loves. And I really feel for all the people who picked up Kreutzer Sonata thinking that they were about to get a lovely love story, because it ain't that. Next we have another loser male protagonist written by problematic author Hunger by Knut Hamsun. This is about a guy in Oslo, although I think it's called Christiania, is it? Like at the time that it was written. But it's about like a starving artist, who's a literally starving artist. He's a writer and he's just walking around the town and being too poor to buy food. There are some vivid scenes in this which made such an impression on me. Like, you really suffer along with this guy. He's not well. He doesn't know how to take care of himself. Like one bit where he finally gets his paycheck and he goes into a fancy restaurant and he buys the most expensive steak on the menu. And then he eats it, and then he goes outside and throws it up, obviously, because he hasn't been eating properly for a long time, and obviously his stomach can't handle that, right? And as he's eating that meat, you're just shaking your head, you're going, no, that's not how you do it. In another one, like, he hasn't eaten for ages, and he just needs to finish his short story, and then he'll get like an advance on it, and then he'll have money to buy food. And he finally finishes it, and he's running through the street to hand it in to his publisher. And as he's running, he kind of realizes something in his head about this story that he doesn't quite like, or that doesn't really make sense. And he just like tears it up and throws it away. And my God, I felt it when he threw away that manuscript. So yeah, I'd say this book is quite relatable in a way that makes you feel better about your own shortcomings. Like, at least I'm not that bad. Now, a writer that I'm quite excited about these days is Greene. I've only read 2 of his books, and I think they're both under 200 words. The End of the Affair is the more famous one. The shorter one and the less known one, and the one I read first actually, is Dr. Fischer of Geneva. These 2 books have a lot in common, and I think it would be so fascinating to do like a proper comparison of them. You can see why Dr. Fischer of Geneva is the less famous one. It's just less thematically, coherent. It's kind of stranger. But I like it more, specifically for that, I think. It's about a guy who works as a translator for a chocolate company in Switzerland, if I remember right. Like, I think he translates their documents and stuff like that. It's like a massive chocolate company, right? Like a big conglomerate or whatever. And in the place where he's staying, there's also this billionaire called Dr. Fischer, who's like famous for his toothpaste. He made like a toothpaste, which like formula, right? Which made him rich. And so there's this kind of, I guess, like tension already between the chocolate company and the toothpaste, because, both of them are sort of opposed to each other. But at the same time, they're interdependent, because, people will need to brush their teeth after they eat the chocolates. And they kind of, there's this sort of weird connection between these 2 big, powerful blocks. And the daughter of Dr. Fischer is encountered by our main protagonist, and they fall in love, and even though there's like a big age gap between them. And so it's kind of like a romance at the beginning, but I think he says at the beginning as well, this is not a love story, this is a hate story. This is all about hate. Like The End of the Affair as well, like the main character insists it's about hate, this is not about love. But yeah, there's a lot in this book. It's about love and hate, but it's also about kind of class, because of the rich circle of friends that Dr. Fischer keeps. And it's about humiliation. Like, Dr. Fischer is just a really unhappy, strange, and kind of evil man. There's lots, okay? And it's just like, if you want to kind of challenge yourself and have a weird time and just be left thinking, what was that about? Then I think this is a good one. And personally, I would like you to read this book so that we can talk about it down in the comments of my videos, because I don't think I know anybody else who's read it. Next is Territory of Light by Yuko Tsushima. It's set in 1970s Japan, following a single mother and her daughter. They move into an apartment which has got like windows on all sides, so there's loads of natural light. And the mother is just really proud of herself that after, going through this difficult split with her partner, she has found a place, a territory of light for herself and her daughter. And the book is going to be like, every chapter is a month in a year. There's 12 chapters, and we just follow a year after they move into this new territory together. Although the focus and the style and the structure is totally different from Passing by Nella Larsen, since I mentioned that is about like kind of survival and, your identity and how society perceives you and just daily life stuff, like I feel like that fits this book as well. Like, it really feels almost dangerous. Like just her everyday life is a book like grounded in mundane events that this woman goes through, but she's not having a great time of it. And there's this sense that if you take a wrong move in raising this kid, something disastrous could happen. But it's not like all doom and gloom either. Tsushima has this sort of magic to make her stories feel infused with hope, even though like I'm not sure exactly where the hope is coming from given the situations that the characters find themselves in, but it's definitely there. And honestly, style is everything in this one. I love Tsushima's writing style. She has these kind of like flashbacks. She'll start with a moment and then we'll move a bit into the future and then we'll flash back to see how we got to that moment, and then maybe there'll be a dream sequence. So everything seems a little bit hazy and dreamlike, but at the same time it runs like a clock. Like every sentence perfectly fits to the next one, in my opinion. I think she's just an amazing writer. And yeah, like the summer book, you could just read these as short stories if you want to take gaps between the chapters, because each one has its own little narrative arc, and like if there's always like a kind of a month in between each one. I actually, when I read this, I read every chapter in a month, so I gave myself a whole year. By coincidence, I started in April. I'm pretty sure it's April, and the book begins in April, right? So then I was like, okay, every month I'll read a chapter. So even though it's a short book, you can really stretch it out. And I think it's quite nice to do it that way, to experience the seasons changing along with the main character. I think Slaughterhouse-Five by Vonnegut would be a great one for someone who is kind of into speculative fiction and going into the classics, because it is like kind of one of those canonical classics of American literature, I think. And it's, about World War II and these kind of events which are mainstream important history stuff. But there's also aliens, and it's like time travel. It's about a veteran from the war, and I think he's supposed to be lost in time, as in he keeps on, his mind keeps on flitting back to different bits of his life in his timeline. It's a really interesting way to kind of get at trauma and like the kind of fractured mind that you would have after going through something like war. But at the same time, it's quite light, it's quite playful. Lots of things don't feel very serious. It's quite funny in places as well. So yeah, if you want to read a book with aliens, but you're also like leaning towards trying a more literary canonical classic, then this is a good one. And finally, my standout book from last year, Love by Angela Carter. This is a love triangle story about two brothers and the girl who moves in with them into their small shabby little apartment in a small town in the UK. It's set in the 60s, and the way that Britain was like changing at that time, and some of the ideas from that time, and the nature and the architecture, it's all like kind of in there in the story, which gives you a real sense of place. But also it's very decadent. The prose is so lovely and gothic and flowery, sometimes a bit too ornate maybe, but also there's so many clever ideas in it that it never feels like, for every sentence that doesn't really hit, there'll be like 5 more that do. And the main thing is the characters. I love these 3 characters. Lee, Buzz, and Annabelle are etched into my heart forever, much in the same way that one of them forces another one to get a tattoo of their name like over their heart, like in a heart over their heart. And it's like, I don't know, there's all sorts of psychological twisty games that they're playing with each other. They're weirdos. They're really weird people in really unhealthy relationships, but I don't know, I found them quite lovable, dare I say it. So there you have it. That's my bonus material, my DVD extras for the short classics that I recommend for people. If you've read any of these, I'd love to hear about it down in the comments, or if any of them sounded particularly interesting to you, or if you have a short classic that you'd like to recommend to me, then yeah, please do let me know down in the comments, and give the video a like, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.